Well, good morning, good morning. My name is Becky Metcalf, and on behalf of Design Centre Chelsea Harbour, a very warm welcome to London Design Week. It's absolutely lovely to see so many people here today. Well, today's discussion, Grow Your Business, Diversity and Design, couldn't be more pertinent, so I'm absolutely thrilled that Alexandra Dawley, Claire Gaskin and Isaac Nowaki are here today. Who better to speak to them than Pip Rich, the Editor-in-Chief of the UK's best-selling Modern Homes magazine. Of course, that's Livingetc. Should we give them a very warm welcome? Yeah.
Hi everybody, thank you so much for coming and to Becky for introducing us. I'm so excited to do this talk because one of the things that we always really try and do at Livingetc is champion new people into the industry. We try and focus on up-and-coming designers and independent makers and people who are doing new and innovative ways. So what I think these guys are going to share will be stuff that anybody at any stage in their career will find useful and helpful and inspiring. I'll just introduce the panel a bit more. So Alexandra Dawley on my left is the brains behind Dawley Design, an award-winning interior design studio that she founded in 2016. We often feature her in Livingetc because what Alexandra does is she's so good at adding character back to new period properties that maybe had it stripped out, or to new builds, adding texture, which is something many of our urban readers really need to know about and really want to know about. So I feel like, I don't know if Alexandra would agree, but that I feel like is her niche that she has built for herself. So we'll find out whether she agrees with that in due course. She's also the co-founder of United in Design, the initiative that launched in 2020 as a way to get more people from different backgrounds into the industry, and we'll come on to more of them later. Next to her is Claire Gaskin, interior designer behind the eponymous design studio, which she founded in 2009. Design's a second career for Claire. She actually worked at Sotheby's beforehand, so I'm quite interested to hear about how she made that switch. She's known for a really decorative use of pattern, layers, and sort of English heritage with a twist. So her work is often featured in Livingetc's sister title, Homes and Gardens, where it sits among that aesthetic very comfortably. And then Isaac Nowaki at the end is an apprentice at Claire Gaskin. He is currently part of the United in Design scheme, which is seeing him do stints at Eggersman, De Rose Sarr, Brady Williams, and Claire Gaskin, which he finishes off in a couple of weeks' time, coming to the end of his year. He's also been featured in Livingetc before. He was in our Rising Stars Names to Know feature last September, as somebody who was making a name for himself through a clever use of materials and understanding how they work. So thank you so much for joining me, panel. Thank you so much for joining this audience. Alexandra, the last time I saw you in real life, it was at a rare meeting. Mm-hmm. It was between lockdowns, September 2020. It was sort of a moment where we were suddenly allowed to do a real thing again for just a brief second. And you told me that your business was moving into a slightly different way of working, and you were going to start taking on people.
Yes.
How's that been? What's happened?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just me for a very, very long time, and it was getting busy, and I quite like to keep control over all sort of sections of the business, but you do get to a stage where you just think, I can't actually manage everything, and it wasn't sustainable, and working till 3 a.m. in the morning is probably not the thing that we should be doing long term. And so, yes, I tend to now bring freelancers in to my projects at various different stages. So sometimes they will work across the whole project, or they might just come in and sort of oversee, the drawing stage, or the FF&E, or the procurement and specifying. And it works really, really well. I mean, I tend to work with the same freelancer, so we kind of do build up a rapport and relationship together. I think I probably will take the leap and have some permanent staff, hopefully by the end of this year. But at the moment, this seems to be working quite well.
I think it's a really interesting business model. I know that a lot of relatively new design studios are going that way now. It allows flexibility in a way that we're all working more flexibly. It's such a lovely thing to do. Claire, tell us, how's life at your studio? How's your studio formed? How does it work?
So I guess I kind of used to be where Alex is now. I worked with a team of freelancers for quite a while, and I'd kind of flex the size of my team according to the projects that I had coming in, so that I felt that I could kind of work well to those projects and to what skills I needed. And then I took my leap last year into taking on full-time, PAYE, proper employees. It's quite a leap. It's quite scary. I'd been putting it off for ages. So I've now got, including Isaac, I've got a me plus 3. And that feels like a really nice size team for me. So I'm employing at the moment, because as such, Isaac has temporarily been part of my team. Yeah.
Great. And Isaac, can you tell us a little bit about your way into the industry and what you've been doing the last year?
Well, I studied interior architecture and graduated in 2017, and I really struggled to get that first job. So I think it took probably 8 months for me to get something, and it wasn't what I wanted. So I did that for a while, and United Design, basically this whole scheme, approached me and said that I should apply to it. And so this is like my first sort of opportunity to get my foot in the door and figure out what I'd like to do long term. But yeah.
Great. Well, I'm looking forward to finding out what you are going to do long term at the moment. I think what I want to get out of this talk is really to inspire people at any stage. So whether you're coming into the industry to sort of figuring things out like Isaac, or whether you want to go from having freelancers to PAYE, or whether you are just looking to like build a brand a bit more. So Alexandria, as a business owner, what was the first thing that you did when you set up Dory Designs?
So I went to KLC and then sort of didn't do the sort of normal route into the industry, because I actually had a career before I was an interior designer and was sort of 31, I think, when I went to KLC. So I was a little bit older, and I didn't feel that I wanted to be a junior in a design firm. I had 2 relatively young kids at that time as well, so I just didn't think that would fit into my way of life. So I just thought, I'm going to go it alone with no portfolio and no clients, and, mad, really, thinking about it now. But I had a great tutor at KLC, Evie Dunbavin Hands, and, she was a huge champion of mine, and she said, Alex, you can do it 100%. I will nurture you. And so she became my mentor, and I used to go to her studio every week and sit with her for a couple of days, and she would show me the ropes and how to talk to contractors and build a relationship with trades and suppliers. And then I set up and I worked for friends, family, mums at the school gate, and they gave me kind of carte blanche and to build up my portfolio. And then I started to advertise my services where I thought my ideal client was sitting, because they teach you to do that at design school. Who's your ideal client? So I used to advertise on lots of Facebook groups, Mum's Net, that kind of thing, because that was who I was kind of targeting. And then got clients, and then it's kind of built lots of word of mouth, lots of referrals, lots of repeat business. And so, yeah, and then I got a website. That was the next thing that I did, and got a little brand together in terms of what, the look was, and got a little logo and things like that. And it just sort of incrementally built. And I worked with a business coach as well, which was invaluable. I kind of knew where I wanted to go, but it seemed like a very long journey to get there. And she helped me kind of chunk it down into little pieces and just tick them off as you went along.
I think that's a really good approach, and I think what's really interesting about what you said there is I imagine many people that don't work in the industry think that being an interior designer is picking lampshades, and talking to contractors is probably about 90% of your job, or much more than picking lampshades part anyway.
Yeah.
Claire, you went to KLC as well.
Yep.
I know that KLC was a little bit of a stretch for you financially at the time.
Yeah.
Do you think it was necessary for you to get to where you wanted to go?
I always find this question kind of hard when I'm here in this location. I think KLC was great because I think it probably gave me the confidence, and I don't know whether my early clients would have taken me on if I hadn't had KLC behind me. But I don't know. I obviously learned a lot, but I really feel that you learn so much when you're working. And, any designer who I know, whether they've studied interior design as a degree, or I only did the short course, so I did the certificate course, not the diploma at KLC. And I find that all of us end up saying that it's not until you're working that you discover those issues, those problems, and you don't have those problems until you do the project that has that thing wrong with it. And that's kind of the same for, I'm on some big projects at the moment with architects, and architects haven't dealt with some of the issues that we've got on the project because they haven't had them before. And, I think sometimes there's kind of this feeling that you should sort of know it all and that that's what's going to happen. And I don't think that is it. I think a lot of people, I didn't want to go to KLC. I was at Sotheby's and I made my decision that I was going to kind of make this change in career. And I researched and I talked to some interior designers and they said, oh, you're like 28, 29, you've got some, business experience behind you, you'll be able to join an interior design practice in a junior position and then they'll train you up. So that's what I did. I took this big gamble, I quit my job, that's what I was going to do. And I got all my work experience set up and I worked with some big names. I was really lucky for about 4 months, 3 different companies. And every single one of them said, oh yeah, that's what we say. But once in a blue moon, do we ever take anyone on who hasn't been to, KLC or the Inchboard? And I thought, what am I going to do? And yeah, I didn't feel, well, it was, I don't know, 20,000 or something, I think, to do the KLC course. And when I then added on the cost of life, that was just not something that was within my reach, which I think a lot of people feel. So whenever people come to me and ask me about, attending a course, I kind of think it's really personal because it depends. If you've got loads of money and that's within your reach, then it's a great place to go and it probably will help open doors. But one of the placements that I was at Todd Hunter Earl, and a lot of the girls there at that time had done the certificate course, and they said, just do the certificate course, you can get it over and done with. And 4 weeks into doing a course, a friend of mine put me forward to do a project, which was not my intention. I thought I'd do the course and then go and get a nice junior job, work with someone, train up, maybe after 10 years have my own business, but I went straight in at the deep end, did the course whilst doing a project, and then got another and another, and 13 years on, here I am.
Wow, I'm sure that the placements were a useful experience. So even just hearing that, oh, actually, that's not how the industry works, is kind of a useful, like an interesting thing to hear. Isaac, on placements at the moment, what have you learned, and what would you advise people going into a placement for the first time to be like?
When a lot of it is like learning on the job, I'm finding, and it's just working with contractors and dealing with clients. My advice to anyone going into the industry, I'd just say, just believe in your ability, and a lot of it is basically you learning whilst you're doing the thing. So just always kind of have that in mind. But ultimately, what I've taken on from each placement is I know that every place is different, everyone works different, you're working with different people all the time. So communication is quite important, and understanding obviously your team and how they function as well.
So when I introduced you, I talked about you adding character and about you and your sort of layered decorative, and that to me is what I perceive as your niches. Does that ring? I'm interested to see. Does that ring true with both of you? Does that seem fair?
Yeah, I mean, I think I tend to follow the Bauhaus principle of form follows function. I work with a lot of families and young professionals, and they want the beautiful aesthetic, but it has to work and it has to be practical and it has to be functional for them as well. So, really taking into consideration the materiality and how they live. I mean, I think, interior design is so much about the emotion of your clients, really understanding how they want to live, how they want to use their space. It's very personal, and that's what I love about the job. I love people. I love getting to know them. You're working with these people for, months, potentially years across a project. You have to really, get along with them. I mean, lots of my clients, it's a professional relationship. It actually ends up becoming a friendship as well. because you do know pretty much everything about them.
Yeah.
You know, which side of the bed they sleep on, you know, and you need to know these things and ask those questions. So, yeah, I would say it's form follows function. My aesthetic is very much sort of modern contemporary as well. I love sort of a neutral background with a pop of colour, and just making sure that it's long lasting as well, that those designs will be timeless and they will, you know, people aren't going to need to be changing them too often.
Because what I'm interested in really is how you honed your niche. So Isaac, you mentioned at the start that you took a job to start off with that you didn't really want to do. And I think it's so understandable, you know, all of us, when we're starting out, and in fact probably throughout most of our careers, are driven by a need for being paid. So what I want to get to the bottom of really is, how do you go about working out what your niche is and focusing on that? Anybody have any thoughts for that?
Well, yeah, I kind of knew what my niche was, so I was always quite technical. So since I was a kid, I was really interested in art and architecture and graphics, stuff like that. So I always had that in mind. So I wanted to kind of have those elements incorporated. But ultimately, as well, it's just, you might be doing a job for a while and realize, okay, this doesn't have those elements, and then you pick up a job which you never thought you'd do, and you're like, oh yeah, this is perfect. So I'm finding that throughout the year, where I'm obviously going through each placement, and yeah, seeing how people work is definitely like eye-opening for me. Like, it's not one set job for me. And also my mum, I don't think my mum would be very happy if I took a job just for money, because she had really invested in my interests when I was growing up, and I always was really passionate to find something that fulfilled it.
Claire, what about you? Because you said that when that first project that you were given was sort of a referral for a friend. So again, and I'm assuming a lot here, that it just sort of you would have said, you may have said yes, whatever it was, because it was an exciting first gig in design.
It was a pretty good first gig, though. I mean, I was quite lucky. It was a townhouse in Belgravia, so it was quite meaty, to be, as a first project. It wasn't just one room. It was the whole property. There wasn't anything structural. So the thing that I kind of felt quite confident about was that we had like one wall that we wanted to open up, that you could tap it and tell that it was okay to take down this wall. And so it felt like it was achievable. It felt like this was within, a kind of first project. Yes, there's going to be a lot to do, and I've got, we were changing floorings everywhere. We had new kitchens, we had new joinery, we had paint colours. It's part of the Grosvenor estate, so there were kind of tricky things to do with that. But it felt like it was manageable. But it was an incredible opportunity, and I still work with those clients now. I kind of feel that if they hadn't have taken that gamble on me, often it's that, it's that first job, or it's that first project, it's that first kind of like leap. Because once I was then doing that, it was a bit easier for that next client to take a risk.
What did they pick you? Did you have anything to show them?
Nothing.
So how did you convince them?
I have no idea. Like, literally, I think, and again, like, they just liked me. This is what, like, a lot of it comes down to people. You're working with these people for a long period of time, and this couple lived in New Zealand, so this was even more of a risk. They were like putting everything in my hands, and they weren't going to be around to keep an eye. I still don't understand how they did it, but they did. I think I met them and I talked to them, and I was really honest and open about what I had and hadn't done. I obviously was not very expensive because it was my first project, but I don't actually think that would have made any difference for them. I think that, the projects after that, it then helped that I could say, oh, I've just done this project in Belgravia. And then once I'd done two more, I then did two in Northwest London area that came through friends, so kind of friends of friends. I then felt a lot more confident about anything that I was approaching. Even though I didn't have a portfolio, I just had that work behind me, and I could say to a client, do you want to speak to a past client? Or I could speak confidently about interactions with contractors and sourcing, and yeah.
So when you're first starting out and kind of getting yourself together, what do you think, as business owners, what do you think is the most important thing to do? Is it build a website, or does that come later? Is it get a logo for the brand, or does that come later? Is it just work, just put yourself out there? How would you start out?
I think actually the most important thing is to get the right team around you in terms of finding the right contractors, the right trades, the right suppliers. I mean, as I say, a lot of my work is through word of mouth. The website's great, it's there, there for people to look at. Instagram's amazing, social media, you know, you can really convey your personality. But actually, if you can't deliver the job to a really, really high standard, you know, and a lot of it's smoke and mirrors. So I feel like get the crux of it right. So found an amazing contractor. We do all of my jobs together. He's fabulous. Know that you can't do everything yourself. Like that was what my mentor told me. She just said, Alex, you know, you're not an expert at everything, and that's fine. You know, do what you do really, really, really well, but also outsource. So if, you know, especially in those early days when you're not, you know, I remember the first time somebody said, oh, can you do the kitchen? And I was like, oh God, because kitchens are hard. Kitchens and bathrooms are really hard. They're super technical, and you can't get them wrong, because if you get them wrong, you know, the impact could be huge. So, you know, there's no shame in speaking to a kitchen specialist or a bathroom specialist. You know, if I want a specialist finished on the wall, you know, I'm not going to, you know, get my contractor to do that. I'm going to bring somebody in who's going to do that and execute it beautifully. So it's knowing your limitations and hiring people in that are, you know, experts in that field. I think that's really, really important.
Claire, would you agree on a similar brand building way?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also interesting talking now when I'm 13 years in versus necessarily what I did. You know, you can hopefully benefit from things that we're saying. I think it is really useful to, my business really evolved. So I didn't have a business plan. I didn't have a business coach, which I have now. I think that something which I think is really important is that a lot of people want to be an interior designer. And when you're an interior designer, you can initially do really good work, and that kind of feels like it's all fine. And then I think that it gets to a stage where you actually realise that you need to be a businesswoman. And that, oh man, there's a big difference between being an interior designer and a business person. And that's something which I really think is important to think about if you're going into the journey of kind of wanting to have your own studio, because actually that's completely different to most of what any of us are going to learn at any kind of college. And that's the sorts of reasons why you need a mentor or a business coach to help you through those steps. Because initially you can probably get away without those things. You can have your, you know, yes, you're good contractors. You can make sure that you've got a decent contract in place, but you'll get to a point where now, you know, I've got an HR support team, I've got a legal support team, and like you need that, because when you get bigger, that's what you need, and when you're doing bigger projects. So I think that's something to really think about, and to realise that I remember someone, I think it's probably a famous quote or something, but talking about the fact that you should always kind of hire like better than you are. Like, don't be afraid to basically like hire people who've got better skills than you at that particular thing, because that's what will really help kind of your business.
This is a really specific question, but I wonder if there's any particular software or ways of doing things that you found really useful as new businesses. So people can take, whether it's, because I mean, I find things like spreadsheets really daunting, and I'm sure most people in this room who are creatives possibly feel the same way. How do you guys go about that?
So I started out with Excel for all of my kind of managing of projects and pricing and things like that, because that made sense to me. I wasn't scared of Excel, and I'd used it lots in my past career at Sotheby's randomly. So I really liked it. And then when I started employing people, they hated it. They just looked at Excel and were like, can't stand it. Oh, I don't understand. Oh, what are these formulae? And they really would get really panicky about it. And everyone wanted to use Estimac or STPC. So I now have Estimac. That's what we use in the studio. But it's basically a glorified Excel spreadsheet. So if anyone's thinking about what, you can do it on Excel. Like, there's no reason why you have to, in my opinion, buy a piece of software for that bit, because you can do it all through Excel. There are lots of really big interior design studios who I know who still do everything on Excel because it's really clever. But I also understand that you might end up in a position where you don't like Excel, or you've got a team who don't like Excel. Like, I doubt I'd go backwards now, even though sometimes I really think about it.
Isaac, you've obviously worked at 4 really great agencies, studios recently.
Yeah.
Are there any business practices that you've picked up that they're doing that you're like, this is great, this is what everyone should be doing?
All of them. I think everyone kind of has that kind of, they do drawings and they have to think about functionality, which is I'm all about. So I think that Eggsman, it was great to go to site, meet the clients and kind of understand them, how they're using the space. And then the process, obviously, the designing full houses or architecture practice. And numerous site visits and getting to know the client, who was quite a famous person, I can't say. So that was quite cool. And also Brady Williams doing like big restaurants in Mayfair, Knightsbridge, and obviously with Claire doing residential projects, high-end residential. So I think that everyone has that need for that technical side, but it's just the other stuff as well, which I'm also picking up all the time.
I used to hate the technical drawing. I didn't used to like it, and I really kind of put it off for a long time and used to outsource it. And then I discovered SketchUp, and I love SketchUp. It's fantastic. You can basically do everything within SketchUp. So I do lots of my drawings in SketchUp, all my perspectives and floor plans and elevations. And you can also do all of your technical drawings, all of your joinery and plans and things like that in SketchUp in another program that they have called Layout, which is great. And I use a program called Design Files. So I don't use Estimac. I use a program called Design Files. I think it's Canadian, but it's fab. So you can pull all of your imagery together to create kind of quotes. You can do all your invoicing in it. So it's like a one-stop shop for everything. And you can have multiple kind of users and things. So if I'm bringing on freelancers, I can set them up on that, and they can do everything. So it's a really good bit of kit.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's fab.
Back to kind of where you'd first started in terms of like what that most important thing is. I think it's, ultimately it's kind of winning those projects, isn't it? Because that's kind of how you get going. And I don't necessarily think that for that first project you have to have that, like anything that's set up. I think you have to kind of know what you're wanting to target, who that client is. But I don't think right at the beginning, I think I was doing hand technical drawings. It kind of depends on what your projects are and what sort of interior design work you're doing. If you're not doing, if you're at the more decorative side of things, then definitely don't, end up having AutoCAD because you're not going to use it. Like you've got to kind of think about what your business is.
I think there's probably something to be said as well for just wandering around a place like the Harbour and soaking in what all the different brands are doing and then creating mood boards of the sort of stuff you might create for a room to help you, I guess, build your own niche. And then, Alexandra, when you were, putting those ads on Facebook and Mumsnet and stuff, I guess just having a mood board even is something to show, right?
That's what I always say to new designers, because it is chicken and egg. You get clients because you've got a portfolio, but you need, you need, vice versa. So I always say to them, if you can learn a program like SketchUp, then you can design whole spaces, virtually, that can go into your portfolio. You can put mood boards together. You can just to show your style. You can be pinning things onto Pinterest to create concept documents as well, and then just put it out there. Just put it out on your socials, you know, so that people will be drawn to you because of your style, and they'll also be drawn to you as a person as well. I think getting your personality across as well is really, really important. Because I think people buy people ultimately, as well as obviously your skill and your design style.
Presumably, as a business grows, it's always about flexing into what's important at that moment and putting resource behind different things. So first of all, it's about building the brand, then it's about other things. How do you know when it's time to flex into the next stage, or what to put resource behind?
You know, I mean, at the moment, I went into interior design because I was so passionate about it and I loved it. And I never ever wanted to get to a stage where I'm not enjoying it because I'm too busy and it's really stressful. So I tend to only have sort of 2 projects running at any one time, because I want to still have that work-life balance. So I don't feel that I'm kind of ready to flex at the moment, because I'm actually really happy with how things are going at the minute. I've got great clients. And they will wait for you as well if you know, because I did have a bit of overwhelm last year. It got quite busy, and I felt, even though I've been running for a few years now, it is a bit of feast or famine, this industry. So you're either like super busy, or you're like, oh my gosh, is my phone broken because it's not working? And so you tend to feel like you have to take everything on. But when you say, actually, I can't do this until, often people will wait. They will wait for you, and that's a nice place to be in. So I'm like, we do 2, and then we start the next 2.
Is that a bit of good
that.
client management too, because they also feel really special because they're getting someone who's like in demand?
I mean, I think I just really want to do a good job on all of my jobs, and I think if you're strung out and you're being pulled in so many different directions, you know, these clients, you know, they're paying you, it's a service-driven industry. They need your attention. You have to be attentive. And if you're everywhere, you just can't be that person. So I'd much rather take on less, but just do it really well.
Now, United in Design was obviously founded as a reaction to the increased conversation around BLM and routes into all industries. Claire, you mentioned earlier that obviously when you were getting into the industry, it was so rare for people to take on a non-trained apprentice, which obviously then cuts out anybody from a lower income household. Do you think anything has changed, A, since then, and B, maybe since United Design has come on the scene?
Oh, gosh. Well, obviously, since the scheme, I think, you know, there is this increased awareness that has been fantastic. I think it's still a really tough industry, personally. I think that it's, you know, to me, I see the diversity issue, as you kind of hint at, as kind of being quite kind of economically led as well, like in terms of, you know, who are the people who are most likely to study at these places or have the exposure to this sort of world. They tend to historically have been those more privileged people. And I think that it will take time for that to kind of change, because I think it's actually changing things that are kind of, the industry are probably quite set in their ways, and that doesn't mean that it can't be changed in a different way. You know, maybe there are new, you know, I remember a few years ago when I just had my son, and my husband suggested that I engage myself with social media, which I hate. I'm not very good at the whole Instagram-y thing. And at the time, I think it was probably really bad timing with all the hormones and stuff, having just had a baby, but I felt like the specific sea of interior designers who I could see, who were female and my sort of age and mums, they were just doing completely different sorts of design to me, and they had completely different sorts of studios to me, and their lives were completely different to mine. They seemed to be living this lifestyle that I just couldn't understand. How are you doing that? And you've also just had a child. And I then got myself stuck into this sort of sea of comparisons, which is, the negative side of social media, isn't it? And I realised that actually I needed to find my own little world of who are the designers who I really relate to, who are those people who I aspire to. And actually, if I'm not saying there's anything wrong with anyone's design, but that's the thing. Like, this is such a huge industry that they can be good at what they're doing and love it, but it doesn't mean that it has to be what I'm doing. And I think that sometimes, there won't always be someone who's doing exactly the same thing as you. When I first started, someone said to me, this is kind of to the point of niche, someone said to me, you've got to have a set style. Claire, you've got to say like what your style is. You've got to make it like, that you're, floral, or you're this, or, you've got, and I just was like, but that isn't what I want to do. I really enjoy working with clients and working on who they are and what the space is and designing to suit that. So it might be floral and twee and I'm, in Colfax and Fowler, and the next minute it might be super duper clean cut and contemporary and not a pattern in sight. And that's what I love about it. Like, for me, that's what makes my job amazing, because all my projects are so different.
Yeah, and thank you. And Alexandria, as one of the founders of Unite in Design, how's it been? How are you finding it going? Has there been any progress? What, are you optimistic or not?
Yeah, I mean, it's been probably one of the best things I've ever done. I've myself and Sophie and the whole team have been really well received within the industry, actually, and the talent that is coming through the universities, because design practices tended to hire from the same places, like KLC, where Claire and I went. But there is a wealth of talent coming out of just normal universities, people that have studied interior architecture, interior design, spatial design, etc. But they weren't tapping in to those universities. So we've kind of opened it up. We've said, look, there's this huge pool of new talent. They're amazing. And it's almost like a little bit of a recruitment arm, I suppose. So we're basically gathering together all of these graduates and then sending them out to the businesses. And the first cohort are finishing. We had 5 apprentices this year across 25 companies. And I am so proud. I'm just so proud of them, the way in which they have approached the programme. They have been hugely successful. All of the businesses as well have got something out of it. They've been exposed to this new group of, from different backgrounds, different experiences, and they're bringing those different experiences and life experiences into these practices. So yeah, we're absolutely thrilled. This year we've got 8 apprentices, so 3 more than last year. And I am really hopeful that we will see people from different backgrounds, not just ethnically diverse backgrounds, but people, from lower socio-economic backgrounds coming into the industry and making a change as well, because it is such a fantastic career. Yeah. And it would be lovely if more people were able to access that.
Yeah, I agree. On that note, we do have a little bit of time for a few questions from the audience, if you have any questions. There is going to be a roving mic, and so if you want to raise your hand, there's one at the front here, but if you could wait until the mic comes to you, I've been told to say. Becky, it's just at the front down here. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nicola. I just had a question. I wanted to direct everyone, I guess. But obviously, just hearing your experience, it's quite clear that a network was super important to have. And my question is, how did you position yourself in terms of networking and getting, because someone to recommend you, that was a network. How to kind of get where to put yourself in the world, activities, events, or your styles where you helped build your network. Because I find in interior design that's super important. And you can have all the portfolios, but most of the people I know who are really successful, at least who I've come across, their network is like gold. And they are very charismatic and charming, but they know all the right people.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really valid point. At the beginning, I would say that, my past experience of having worked at Sotheby's helped, because some of my initial projects were through that network, and then that taps you into those people's friends' network. And I definitely do think that, you know, when you are going it alone, then ultimately, if your friendship group aren't a friendship group who ultimately know people who are likely to employ an interior designer, then that may be a limiting factor. But I think that you can be really clever about how you can do business networking. So I think that, you know, architects, contractors, like getting to know, you know, who's an architect whose style you like, and then kind of meeting them and kind of being like, you know, like often architects put forward, I'm working on a huge project at the moment, and the architects put me forward for it and they'd never worked with me before. So, you know, I think that there's all kinds of different routes. Like I've been put forward by kitchen designers, by contractors. So it's not just thinking about the kind of end client in terms of the direct route to them. I remember someone saying that, you know, it's kind of building up that picture of who that client is, and then thinking, who's in their world? Who will they be talking to? So they'll be talking to their architect for planning permissions, or I don't know, I remember someone saying, you know, they'll have a nanny. Is there a route to get to the nanny or to the... So I think, you know, sometimes you have to, you know, think a little bit about who those clients are, and then how you might...
Claire, would you just, if you found an architect firm that you really liked and did stuff that you really liked, would you just sort of cold email them or cold call them and say, let's go for a coffee? Is that what you mean by meeting them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard because obviously people are really busy. I think really, you know, ultimately you want to get a face-to-face interaction that involves you having a cup of coffee with someone so that they remember your face and they engage with you, so that you can say, you know, I'm looking for work. This is the sort of work that I do. This is the sorts of projects that would be ideal for me. It'd be great to work with you at some point. And then checking in with them a period of time later. I think that's really, really important.
I have to say, like, I know it's slightly different because I'm a journalist, not a designer, but in my 20-year career, I think I've been approached for a coffee in that way maybe twice. And I've gone on both of them because I've been absolutely delighted. I've been, wow, someone wants to meet me. So I think you might be surprised that sometimes people are flattered into doing it sometimes. It's worth a try anyway.
Oh yeah, I think you need to. I think this industry, you know, there are so many people going for the same jobs. If you need to go and work, if you want to go and work in a design practice, you know, there's so many interior designers, so many people want to be interior designers now. So I think you do have to stand out a little bit and, you know, send your CV, send your portfolio, pick up the phone, ring them. I rang loads of people and was like, can I just come in for a day? Can I just come in and shadow somebody, you know, for a week? You know, and lots of people said yes, because you're taking the initiative and you're showing your drive and your passion, and that will set you apart, you know, from somebody else.
The other thing to add into that is, maybe it was just me, but a lot of people also say no. So just don't be disheartened by all those people who say no. Like I remember like writing to loads and loads of interior designers, like when I was first wanting experience, and I got a lot of people who just never replied at all, which I thought was rude. And then a lot of people who said no, and then a small handful who said yes. But that's all that matters. You've got to remember that, like, all you need is a few, you know, a couple of yeses can make all the difference.
Are there any more questions at all? There's one in the middle. If you could just wait for the mic. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Nikki, and I've just started my interiors business called Interiors Pad. I've actually put my name down for United in Design, but not necessarily to be an apprentice. I was looking for a business mentor. Is that something that United in Design actually does offer? And
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we tend to pair. We have mentors that will sort of take on people which on with whatever journey. So sometimes it's to supplement somebody's studies, or if, as you say, you've just started your business. So we would put you in touch with an established interior designer, if that's, you know, what you're doing. And then, yeah, you kind of build the relationship. So you might have calls, we kind of say every 6 weeks or something like that, whether that's face-to-face. I mean, last year it was sort of via Zooms and things like that. But yeah, you very much are able to ask, you know, whatever questions that you feel need answered. And I mean, it's great. I think everybody really should have a mentor or try to be, a mentor.
I think
if
have
you are,
numerous mentors actually.
yeah, I mean, I think even if you're just a couple of the rungs up the ladder above somebody else, you've got something to offer. It doesn't really take that much out of your day just to.
I think movies sometimes position mentors as someone who's like an old, wise person who's like going to guide you through your entire life. But actually, I've had many mentors that have been mentors for short periods of time.
Yeah.
And so,
And maybe just for a specific thing as well. I've just started up my business and I've got this, and this question to ask you. Is that okay? Fine. And then your questions may be answered and off you go.
Isaac, you sound like you've made the most of having mentors.
Yeah, I think, like the networking has just been immense for the whole year. So I think that a lot of people just want to follow my journey and they've offered to be my mentor. So I've always got that person to kind of reach out to if I've got any questions. And I think that's one of the things, like, you're going into this industry and you think you know a lot, but you really don't. So a lot of it is kind of reaching out, and I know people have my back. And but I think how it started off really was me sending a message to Sophie via Instagram.
Sophie from United Design.
Sophie Ashby. So, and she offered to do like one-on-one mentoring, and this is before the scheme even started. So I think just always just taking the initiative and just messaging, reaching out to people.
Yeah. Because mentorship doesn't also need to take a lot of a mentor's time. You don't need to feel guilty about asking for it. Like, it can literally be a 20-minute phone call sometimes to answer specific questions. It doesn't need to be, a huge chunk of someone's life. So don't feel guilty about asking for it.
Yeah.
Are there any more questions at all? Yeah, yes, down the front.
Hello. Alexandria and Clay both mentioned that you have business coaches. How important have they been in terms of things like accountability, for example, in progressing your strategic goals for your businesses?
I mean, my business coach, yes, she was integral, really, to me being able to develop a business plan. So we worked on a business plan together. We worked on sort of revenue streams and how many jobs, if I wanted to earn X, what does that look like in terms of how many jobs do I need to do? How do I need to charge then? I'm working on kind of all of those structures as well. And so it is a huge task to take on board, but if you work with a professional like that, they will help to compartmentalize all of those things, so it becomes much easier to sort of digest and work through. So I still see her now. We still have sessions, because obviously business changes and it evolves, and then different things come in. So I'll often just tap in with her, and we'll just work out that next stage, and I'll be like, right, cool, I'm confident with that, tick, move on.
Yeah, I only started having a business coach about 1.5 to 2 years ago, and I see him in a kind of group scenario by Zoom with other, small business owners. They're not all in the design industry. And the thing which I really like is the accountability that you mentioned. So the thing which I think is really good is kind of setting those targets and goals of things that I'm supposed to do in that next period of time, and that I'm making them to a group of, they've now become friends. And then, when you next check in, oh no, have you done that thing that you were supposed to do? Because it's just that promise, making it kind of out loud to others almost makes it more likely that you're going to do it. I feel like it's one thing writing it down on a piece of paper that's just for you, but somehow I've found that, and like I said before, I think that journey to being more and more of a business person does mean that most of us need some help getting there, and that it evolves in terms of, those things about what direction you're going in, and, what your targets are and where you want to focus. Any of your profits, are you wanting to put it into marketing? Are you wanting, there's lots to think about.
We've got time for one more question, and then I'm going to volunteer our speakers to be milling around at the end. If you do have any questions and want to pounce on them, feel free. So one more. Sorry, I'm just going to go in the middle.
Hi there. Listening to Alexandria speak, I'm in exactly the same place as I think you were a while ago, and I'm there till 3 o'clock in the morning with a young family, but I am a bit of a control freak as well. And I actually trained in the States. We came back in 2012, and that's when I set up the business. But even then, overseas, there seemed to be loads of support for young interior designers setting out. So loads of internships, loads of freelancers, people, social media everywhere for interior designers, people who do your Instagram, and that was then. And now it's amazing over there. And I just find I look for help here for that kind of, getting freelancers in, who can do my Instagram. 1 minute I'm doing my invoices, the next minute I'm client-facing, pitching for a job. It's just mad. So in addition to places like Indeed, are there any good resource centres that you would approach for that sort of work? And I have spoken to KLC, and they said to me, well, our interior designers are really looking for more permanent positions or part-time as opposed to, and I understand that as well, but it just feels like there must be other resources in this country. There's so many people trying to get into the industry. Are there any secrets that I'm missing?
I mean, this might now be because I'm a bit more... So I get a lot of people contacting me, especially for things like social media. I mean, I would say you've obviously got the LinkedIn, I think is a pretty good option, especially for freelancers. I would say that everything that you're talking about is out there here. I don't think it's that it doesn't exist here. I think LinkedIn is quite good. Instagram, if you're on Instagram, kind of pushing things there. I think if you've got other industry friends, then I know that I definitely used to talk to my other interior design friends and say, if you have anyone approach you who's not right for you, but you think might be right for me, or I'm looking for this sort of person. And for freelancers specifically, I mean, I think there's loads of freelancers out there because I think that there's a lot of designers who quite like working in a freelance kind of capacity. And I mean, I've found freelancers through KLC, so I don't think they're all necessarily I think some of them might think that they don't want to go down that route, but then it always depends. So,
yeah, I often as well work with other established interior designers. So, because I said earlier, it is feast or famine. And so lots of people are interior designers, have their own practices, but maybe, they just don't have any projects at the moment. And so I'll say, I'm really busy. Do you want to come and work with me? And come in and they'll come across. So I don't think it needs to necessarily be, a student or, it can just be other people because, as I say, a lot of it on Instagram is smoke and mirrors. People are not that busy all of the time. And the whole comparison thing. So just reach out. I've got some great people that are incredibly talented in their own right, but they've just got a bit of time on their hands. And if I only want them to come and do the drawings or, can you come and do some sourcing for this project? They'll be like, yeah, absolutely. And I'll pay them and they'll invoice me and then it's fine. And it's circular. If I've ever got time, if I find myself at a loose end, I pick up the phone and I ring them. And I'm like, girls, is there anything? And they'll often say, yeah, come across and come and do this with me. So I think we know it's hard. It is hard. So I think we are probably more willing to help each other than maybe people outwardly think that we are. I think if you ask the question,
Yeah, I think it's all about asking. It's kind of the same as everything about the job. Don't feel like you have to know everything about, ask the carpenter or the plumber. We've all got to kind of be willing to ask a silly question. So I'd ask lots. Or if you see someone who's got who you really, think that their social media account looks great, why don't you message them and find out whether they actually run it themselves, because they might not. There's all sorts of
Thank you so much for the questions, and thank you so much to the panel for your insight. It was so amazing. Thank you.
I don't know about you, but I was writing lots of notes. Gosh, what a great session. Thank you for your amazing ability to share your business experiences, your creative know-how, your expertise. We've covered a lot. mentoring to marketing, social media, working with contractors, suppliers, outsourcing, of course, those clients. And we really do appreciate your candour and your enthusiasm and your passion for interior design. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Isaac. Thank you, Pip, for leading the session so beautifully. Thank you, audience, for joining us today. Let's give ourselves a very big round of applause.